Wednesday week.
I just love the drama.
Biggest U-turn since winter fuel allowance.
Cut that.
Because loose lips, same chips.
And what the fans want is to stop teams being owned by madmen.
Listen, you're really making a mess here. You're not doing what you're supposed to be doing. We're getting really cross with you.
The sticky patch came when the rest of the team's sticky patch came, which was sort of January onwards.
Grumble, boobs joke, hot wings.
No, let me tell you, I don't have to look at this objectively at all.
The Wednesday week!
Put on your podcast!
Hello, good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Wednesday week. Hello from the other side edition. Joining me this afternoon is Adrian from the Liquidator podcast, talking about our upcoming game against West Bromwich Albion in... Adrian, how are you, pal? You all right?
Hello from the other side, from the Hawthorns, or near enough anyway, speaking to you about 5 miles from B71 and looking ahead to the game against Wednesday with some trepidation, I have to say.
Trepidation? Trepidation? We're at your gaff.
Well, the last time we were at our gaff, we were quite good, actually. We blew Preston off the park for, well, no, maybe I exaggerate, but it was our best performance of the season all round, both entertaining, which we've been lacking, honestly, this season. We actually scored 2 goals, courtesy of Mikey Johnson and Isaac Price. 2 worldies, actually, 2 cracking goals. Mikey Johnston from range, Isaac Price from just outside the penalty area. 2 brilliant strikes. We let one in late on and had a last-minute panic, which has become a little bit of a kind of trademark of this season. But overall, that last home performance was exactly what we were hoping for from this season. Since then, we've travelled away twice and lost twice. We lost to Watford, a club who have recently only appointed Javier Gracia back, and after a decent half hour in which we again scored a cracking goal through Isaac Price, we were dreadful for the rest of that game against a classic mid-table championship team. And you think, okay, disappointing hour, they've come back into the game, they've beaten us 2-1. Chance away at Ipswich to put it right against a team who themselves had been stuffed 3-0 in the midweek by Charlton Athletic, newly promoted. Do we go there and take advantage of their weakness? Do we test their goalkeeper, who is not their regular keeper because Alex Palmer had been injured in the previous game? No, we do not. We attempt our first strike on goal, or the first one on target anyway, and the 90-plus second minute. We play in some kind of deep defensive shell, and we get beaten. And a lot of Albion fans, even though we're only 12 league matches into the reign of Ryan Mason, are already feeling a bit disgruntled, not happy with the boss. It is not a happy camp at the Hawthorns.
I mean, let's talk about that right from the start. So Ryan Mason has finally stepped out of the interim manager position at Spurs, one that he seemed to hold every 5 minutes. As soon as he got rid of a manager, Ryan Mason stepped in. Taking the big boy job at West Brom was a bit of a leap of faith and a test of his actual ability as a manager. I mean, what were your expectations at the start of the season for that type of thing?
Very, very difficult. What was intriguing about this appointment is that, as with the case with Wednesday, we had our financial problems. We had an owner who didn't really know how to run a football club. Unlike Chansiri, our owner, as he was then, Gurchan Lai, didn't even have any money to spend, took us over in the Premier League, and pretty much the business model was stay in the Premier League and hope. But there wasn't the football expertise behind it, as I suspect was the case with Wednesday, but nor was there the money behind it to try and push on in any way. So the club's been on a downward spiral since, and we would have gone into administration, I suspect, like Wednesday, but for the arrival of Sheelan Patel, who is an American entrepreneur, and his family, who've taken over the club. And of course, they have been welcomed with open arms and show real interest in the club, not just in the first team, but in the under-21s, in the women's team, and so on. And they have all the signs of being good owners. But they appointed as their sporting director a guy called Andrew Nestor, And Patel had previously had an involvement with Bologna, and Nesta had been involved too with him at Bologna previously. Now, a sporting director, his job really is to head the recruitment, and he's spoken about being very much a data-driven model. And
they all do now, don't they?
Well, indeed they do. But, clearly at some clubs it works, doesn't it? You look at Brighton, you look at Hearts now, who've got Tony Bloom, who is Brighton's owner, who's now gone into Hearts and transformed them this season. Tony Bloom's also got an interest in Union Saint-Gilloise in Belgium, who are also pulling up trees. So data can work, but it's all about how you interpret it, how you apply it. And what was slightly puzzling, given all this talk about the data-driven model, was that there was very little data on Ryan Mason to go on as a manager. And since last Christmas Eve, when Carlos Corberán walked out on us to go and take a job in Spain, he'd done a great job at Albion, but by the end of his reign, really, things had started to turn a little bit sour, all a bit slow, laborious and tippy-tappy. They then went after a guy called Raphael Vicky, and Raphael Vicky accepted the job, but one of his coaching staff couldn't get a visa to the UK. So Vicky pulled out. It was all a bit weird. So then we went for what Andrew Nesta insisted was a data-driven appointment, but which felt like a sentimental appointment of our former manager, Tony Mowbray. And you'll know him, of course. And, Mowbray was pretty much loved even for his first spell at the Hawthorns, but it was only just recovering from very serious cancer operations, just never seemed like the same man. So when he went, we were thinking, well, what's going to happen here? So it's hard to see, for all the talk of a data-driven model, how a manager who's had a couple of interim spells at another club could have got the job purely on data. Very hard to understand that. So there must have been something about Mason they liked. And, I think we're all guilty, aren't we? People playing to prejudice, playing to stereotypes. And Mason was young, to which you can usually add the word progressive, because that tends to go. Yeah.
But I was the same with Keith Andrews when he got the Brentford job. I was like, they sold Mbumo, and they sold who was the other fella? Was it the Scandinavian fella? And I thought they're going to struggle. Wisser was the other one as well.
Yeah.
But I thought they were going to struggle, but Andrews also, Brentford falls into that Brighton data-driven model, doesn't it? And I think they're doing all right, Brentford, in terms of the club that they are. And fair play to them, because I thought they were going to struggle this year. And it was the same when Brighton sold all of their superstars to Chelsea for 100 million plus a couple of years ago, and then they still managed to stay up there. So there is an argument, and you're right, it's the interpretation of the data that whether that can work, because I know that there have been other managers. I mean, look at Ruben Sellers at Sheffield United, data driven, and couldn't buy a win for them. So there's an element of it not working and it not being read correctly. But he's worked with some big names and he's worked with some big players. So I appreciate that there'd have been a degree of trepidation. Has the football changed much under Mason?
Well, we were promised front foot football, and that's
we're always promised football.
Well, in a way, that's the problem, because Corberán, who, as I say, did a terrific job, saved us from relegation in his first season, nearly got us to the playoffs in that season. Then in the second season, did get us to the playoffs when clearly we were not good enough to go up, and we lost in the semi-final over 2 legs to Southampton, who ended up going up, and they were miles better than us, Southampton. And look what happened to them.
They were rubbish when they went up.
Exactly. But, so you kind of think, all right, we didn't go up under Corberán. Then the next season, we were still in and around the playoffs. But as I say, this kind of slow, laborious style had started to wear thin a little bit with the fans. And so Mowbray, people harking back to his previous reign in the kind of around 2010, 2008, 9, 10, that era, he was very much a front foot footballer or football manager. And we were hoping for that. It never worked out. He just didn't have the players. He attempted the transition too quickly. But we've had a whole summer now for Mason to get his feet under the table, a whole summer of recruitment. And then you think, okay, we are going to play front football. Now, what I will say is that until the last until one game away at Millwall, which I went to, the team have always put effort in. There's no lack of effort. It's kind of a sweaty team, really. There's a lot of graft in there, but it hasn't been pretty. And although we can score these spectacular goals, and Mikey Johnston, who cuts in from the left, has been one of our more dangerous players. Isaac Price, who reached double figures as a goal scorer for Northern Ireland quicker than George Best did. So he's a decent player, but he misses a few as well. But we've got some talent there. But in general play, we seem to create very few chances. There's very little creativity in the side. Obviously, in fairness to Ryan Mason, he lost Tom Fellows, one of the best wingers in the division, and possibly the best winger in the division in terms of chances created. We also sold our right back Darnell Furlong, who I liked, but who some of our fans were a bit down on. But we then replaced him at right back with an American guy called George Campbell, who we're told is really a centre half. And just doesn't look like a championship player at the minute, truthfully. Or at right back, another guy called Alfie Gilchrist, who we got from Chelsea. But again, a player who doesn't really like advancing above the halfway line. So our attack on the right-hand side has definitely diminished. We've had a guy there on loan from Villa. That's usually a bad sign for us, by the way. We only ever get duds from Aston Villa. But Sam Illing Jr., and he's 21. He's an England under-21 international. He's liable to have a moment in a game. He's very strong and fast and powerful, inconsistent, doesn't deliver that often, but has got a good goal or a good assist in his locker. But we haven't really replaced the quality that Tom Fellows represented.
But you were talking earlier about data-driven, and that kind of means the nerds have taken over. Somebody said, somebody decided that there's a lot more goals in set pieces. So you find the marauding winger hitting the byline and getting it across, that Murphy does for Newcastle, doesn't really land anymore. You've got people dancing and diving all over the place so they can stick the 8-dimple Lego brick on the back beans on toast and stick it in. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the danger of getting what was the word used? Progressive managers in. Now listen, the last 6 have been a mixed bag. Very few draws, either wins or losses. Did I hear you mention earlier on that there's been some grumblings about the coach?
There have been, yeah. I mean, he was booed by the fans who travelled away to Ipswich. I think it's quite a recent thing. I mean, he's only been manager for 12 games. I went to Millwall away when we got hammered 3-0 against a team who in midweek had lost 4-0, but Dr. Albion was in the house and we gave them 3 points on a plate, and they were very happy. And that was the game. That was probably 9 games in, when the manner of the performance made people start to question Mason, I think, for the first time, because not only did we not really create very much, it did feel very lifeless and a little bit submissive. Now, I think that's an outlier. I don't think we've laid down and let teams beat us generally.
No.
I mentioned that was, contradicted then by the win against Preston. But then the last 2 games, again, games in which we've created very little. So there is definitely already a question about Mason. I mean, this is probably of little interest to Wednesday fans, but I mentioned this guy, Andrew Nestor. I think, and we talk about this on my podcast, The Liquidator, that what's he got to work with? Has the recruitment let him down? But I think the takeaway for Wednesday fans is that however weak you are, I think you've got, as a club and as a team, fantastic spirit. You got the great news that Chansiri has gone. You know that this season is going to be, to put it politely, an uphill struggle. But anything you can get from any game will be cheered as if you won the cup final.
Exactly that, and so there was an element of the game against Oxford, our first game without Chansiri last Saturday, and the atmosphere was feral. It was like a party atmosphere, and we're celebrating going into administration, which in itself is absolute insanity. And but they scored a really soft goal after about 10 to 12 minutes, and just a generic pump into the box, and the lads nodded it in, and it sucked the life out of the crowd. Now, On the other hand, the atmosphere at Hillsborough specifically has been very, very poor. That I just don't think that the chanting and the cheering's it's a societal thing. I think kids are too worried about getting videoed, and you know what I mean. People aren't as loud and cheery anymore. The away days, however, are feral. Like, you know what I mean? We travel well away. There was this huge conversation happened during our no pound in the ground and our no spending the money at under Chancery's reign. There was a huge conversation about whether we should be going to away games because Chancery might make £4. You know what I mean? We were genuinely having those conversations when really the undercurrent of that was pretty much the TPP points that you get for you know what I mean. The away days have become a bit of a closed shop, and I think people were a bit more worried about that than anything else. Which means that the away following is amazing. And we were fortunate enough to speak to Barry Bannon a couple of weeks ago, and he said you can really hear the difference. Like, you know, you can hear the difference in the crowd. And we've got our only win this season against Portsmouth away. You know, the Hawthorns is a very old school stadium. You know, 4 sides proper. You know what I mean? I like going to West Brom, and there's an element of could we go there and endeavour? Will endeavour get us over the line? Now, I think after that, to bring this full circle, after that 10-minute spell of us chanting and cheering and then conceding a goal, we all of a sudden in one header of a ball realised that we have got no depth in this team, and we've just basically got a load of kids and reserves running around on the pitch alongside Barry Bannon and Jan Valery. You know what I mean? So we were frustrated not to get a win against Birmingham, which was a great place to go and try and get some points. But I feel like you're being a little bit harder on yourself in terms of Ipswich, a difficult place to go to, I think, this season, because Ipswich are obviously coming down from the Premier League and retained some of their players. But I feel it could be a right old ding-dong battle. I feel like it's going to be Endeavour against the nerds. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah. Can I just say, by the way, and just a plug, a shameless plug, this is my book.
Get it in.
Which relates to what you're talking about. This is my book called Where's the Money Gone? The Battle for the Soul of English Football. And it's, although Wednesday don't feature in it, it is about what happened to all of our clubs, including Wednesday, in terms of really from the Premier League era onwards, the era of mass financialization of football, the coming of sugar daddies from abroad, some of whom had no idea about English football, some of whom had no money or had other people's money. So all these sorts of stories. And there is a little QR code there if anybody wants to order the book. Where's the Money Gone? The Battle for the Soul of English Football. And I do want to pay tribute as a fan to Wednesday's fan group, genuinely. I do another podcast called Where's the Money Gone with Charlie Methan. You may remember Charlie from the Sunderland Till I Die documentary. He's also been a director.
How does he feel about that now, looking back on it? Does he...
Oh, well, I think he takes it in good humour, but he'll point out that a lot of skill is present in the editing room. Let's put it that way. But listen, on the latest episode of Where's the Money Gone, relevant to you, he breaks down what happens to a club in administration. And I would urge any Wednesday fan to listen to it, because in what we all get it, you're out of the woods. And I was so cheered that so many of your fans boycotted against Middlesbrough, and there's a whole chapter in my book about Blackpool fans who also boycotted for 4 years. One fan described it as the ultimate sacrifice, and
because there was a Wembley visit in there as well.
Yeah. They only took 6,000, I think, to Wembley, having taken 24,000 the previous time. You know, so I think as supporters, we support our teams. We're all tribal. That's what draws us to football. And I'm not saying we should be anything other than that, but there's also a commonality and a community around football that we all share. And I know that this week, had Chancery still been there, Albion fans would have joined in roundly on the 10th minute in that round of applause. I know there was one being planned for this week. There is also going to be one on 57 minutes to mark the passing of Mark Townsend, the Albion fan who died at Hillsborough. And I just like to spread the word of that. And I should stress, because nobody attaches any blame Wednesday fans for that tragic incident, but clearly there was something lacking, according to many eyewitness accounts anyway, in the way that was handled. So it'd be great if Wednesday fans could show that their appreciation too in that moment. But just to say, well done to you, as a fan group. You have been fantastic, and you've been a model really, because you've been restrained, you've been sensible, you've sought dialogue, and you've been rebuffed all the way down the line. But the other side of this is that you got administration now, you got Chansiri out. That's clearly going to be a long process. Yeah.
And that's it. That's it. I tell you what, the football family stuff I've spoke about a lot on various different media outlets about, but Leicester, Wrexham. There's been a number of clubs that have come to Hillsborough. We've gone there, and they've really understood our plight. You know what I mean? And you're right. I don't doubt that the West Brom fans would have done the same thing this Saturday. However, you know what I mean? We're a bit out the woods, so we'll see how it goes. We'll see what pans out on 10 minutes. But I tell you what, let's have a score prediction from you, Adrian. How do you think it's going to go?
Okay, well, taking your cue that Wednesday are a team of Barry Bannon, maybe one or two other half-decent players and a bunch of kids, I've got to say that Albion will win maybe 3-1. I think, to go back to the Ipswich point that you made, I think that their manager made the point that there was a strange atmosphere at times in the stadium before they got the goal that beat us late on.
And it was late as well.
Yeah. So, and I think if we haven't scored by the hour mark, I think there will be a similar atmosphere. It'll be an atmosphere kind of waiting to turn. But truthfully, although we're not a terrible side, we're 11th in the table. We're not bad. We've won 5, we've lost 5. But truthfully, against a team which has had the problems that Wednesday has had, if we're not winning and not winning by 2 clear goals, then more is wrong than we've realised. So I'm going Albion 3, Sheffield Wednesday 1.
It's going for 3-1.
Hey?
3-1. I was thinking like 1-1 because I feel like our tails are up. But I also understand that there's an element of there's a quality lacking there, and I feel like you've got a bit more quality, so I wouldn't be surprised if 3-1 does roll over the line, if I'm honest. But listen, Adrian, let's have one more plug for your book. It's called Where's the Money Gone? The QR code is in
the battle for the soul of English football. There it is. That you don't get it with this bit cut off, by the way. That's my special.
Oh, is that special
copy? And you can order it through that QR code there.
The QR code's on the screen now, ladies and gents. Adrian, thanks very much, and I will see you on the other side. Cheers, boss.
Every week, live from 8 p.m. It's the Wednesday Week. Bringing you football analysis.
They said we'll win the league next season.
Bringing you modern references.
I did a little 1920s fist pump there. Not done that in a while.
If we could do just a 1-to-1, not me because it'd last 7 days apparently, like Craig David.
I should not have said that. I should not have said that.
This shows like you're mental. No, I'm not.
Clip that.
Bringing you terrible impressions.
Wibble, wobble, wobbly, wobbly, wibble, wobble, Cyber Jordan. When, hey, you got to play a 4-4-2. She.
I don't know where these jokes are coming from.
Available on all social medias.
Obviously, this goes out on YouTube and as well as all the other social media out there, podcasts, etc.
The award-winning Wednesday Week. Join us.
Put on your pod